You know that moment when you're standing in line at the gas station and the guy in front of you just dropped $40 on scratch-off tickets and you can't help but do the math in your head? $40. That's a tank of gas. That's groceries for 2 days. That's a bill that's about to be late. And yet, there he is, scratching away with the kind of hope usually reserved for lottery winners in movies. Here's the thing that's going to make you uncomfortable. That guy isn't stupid. He's not bad with money because he doesn't understand math. He's playing a completely rational game, given the circumstances he's stuck in. And once you understand why, you're going to see poverty, wealth, and risk-taking in a completely different light. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why people make the decisions they do with their cash. If you've ever wondered why the people who can least afford to gamble are often the ones gambling the most, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see the world a little differently. Now, before we get into the psychology behind this, let me ask you something. When you see someone buying lottery tickets while struggling financially, what's your first instinct? Most people jump straight to judgment. They think, if that person just stopped wasting money on tickets, they'd have savings. It's the same logic behind every "why are poor people poor" hot take you've ever scrolled past. But here's what that logic completely misses. It assumes everyone is playing the same game with the same rules. They're not. Let's start with the math everyone loves to point out. The odds of winning a major lottery jackpot are somewhere around 1 in 300 million. You have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice while also getting attacked by a shark. From a pure expected value standpoint, buying a lottery ticket is one of the worst financial decisions a person can make. So why do the people with the least money do it the most? Here's where it gets interesting. Researchers have found something called the poverty premium on hope, and it explains almost everything. When you have zero path to financial security through conventional means, saving $5 a week doesn't feel like progress. It feels like nothing. If you're making minimum wage and drowning in bills, saving your way to a comfortable retirement isn't just slow. It's mathematically almost impossible within your lifetime. But a lottery ticket? That's a shot, however small, at completely rewriting your entire financial future in one afternoon. Think about it from a game theory perspective. If you're financially secure, saving and investing makes total sense because the math actually works in your favor over time. Compound interest, steady contributions, decades of growth. It's a winning strategy if you have decades and disposable income to work with. But if you don't have either of those things, that strategy doesn't apply to you in any meaningful way. You're not choosing between save steadily and gamble. You're choosing between grind forever with no realistic finish line and take a tiny shot at an actual finish line. When you frame it that way, the lottery ticket starts looking less like stupidity and more like a desperate but logical bet. This is why you'll notice something fascinating if you look at lottery ticket sales data. They spike in lower income zip codes, and they spike hardest right around the first of the month, right after bills get paid and people realize how little is left over. It's not a coincidence. It's a direct response to feeling financially trapped. Now, let's flip this around and talk about why wealthy people generally don't buy lottery tickets. Or if they do, it's more of a joke than a strategy. It's not because rich people are smarter or more disciplined. It's because the math of their situation is completely different. If you already have $500,000 invested and growing at 8% a year, you're gaining tens of thousands of dollars annually without lifting a finger. Why would you risk any of that on a 1 in 300 million shot when your existing strategy is already working? The wealthy aren't avoiding gambling because they have superior willpower. They're avoiding it because they don't need it. Their path to life-changing money already exists. It's called compound interest, and it's just slower and less exciting than a jackpot. This reveals something uncomfortable about how we talk about financial responsibility. We love to lecture people about delayed gratification and long-term thinking, but delayed gratification only makes sense if delaying actually leads somewhere. Tell someone making $30,000 a year with no assets that if they just save consistently, they'll retire comfortably in 45 years. And technically, you're not lying. But you're also ignoring that 45 years of scraping by is an almost unbearable ask for a human being trying to have some quality of life today. Here's a wild statistic that puts this into perspective.
Households earning under $30,000 a year spend, on average, more than double the percentage of their income on lottery tickets compared to households earning six figures.
It's not because they have more disposable income to throw around. It's because the emotional value of hope outweighs the mathematical cost of the ticket. A $2 ticket buys you 3 days of imagining a different life. That fantasy has real psychological value, even if the odds are terrible. But there's a second piece to this puzzle that almost nobody talks about, and it has to do with something called scarcity mindset. When researchers study how people make decisions under financial scarcity, they find something remarkable. Scarcity doesn't just limit your money, it limits your cognitive bandwidth. Constantly worrying about whether you can cover rent, whether the check will clear before the card gets declined, whether you can afford both groceries and the electric bill this week. That mental load eats up brain power the same way running too many apps eats up your phone's battery. Studies have shown that being in a state of financial scarcity can reduce someone's effective cognitive function by an amount comparable to losing an entire night of sleep, or roughly 13 IQ points. Think about what that means. It's not just that broke people sometimes make bad short-term decisions. It's that scarcity itself creates the conditions for short-term decision-making. You literally have less mental capacity available to plan 5 years ahead when you're mentally consumed by surviving the next 5 days. This is why just make better choices advice falls so flat. It's like telling someone running on 2 hours of sleep to just concentrate harder. Sure, theoretically possible. Practically, incredibly difficult. Meanwhile, wealthy people get to make decisions from a completely different mental state. They're not choosing between rent and groceries, so their brains have room to think about tax-advantaged accounts, diversification, and 30-year time horizons. It's not that wealthy people are naturally more patient, it's that patience is a luxury scarcity doesn't allow you to afford. Now, here's where this gets even more layered, because it's not just about the math or the psychology. It's about what each group actually believes is possible for them. If you grow up watching your parents work multiple jobs and still fall behind every month, and you watch that pattern repeat for your entire childhood, you don't develop the belief that steady, disciplined saving leads to freedom. You develop the belief that the system isn't built for people like you to win through conventional means. That belief isn't irrational. It's evidence-based, built from lived experience. Compare that to growing up in a household where your parents had investment accounts, talked about retirement planning at the dinner table, and modeled what long-term wealth building actually looks like. You don't just inherit money in that scenario. You inherit a completely different relationship with risk and patience. You've literally watched the save and invest strategy work in real time. Of course you trust it. You have proof. This is where the lottery ticket becomes almost a mirror for something much bigger. It's not really about the ticket itself. It's about which financial strategies feel believable to you based on what you've actually witnessed working. Someone who has never seen steady saving lead to real financial freedom isn't being irrational by chasing a bigger, faster win. They're making a bet on the only strategy that has any chance of actually changing their circumstances within a time frame that feels meaningful. Let's talk about something else that reinforces this cycle, and it's uncomfortable but important. The entire lottery system, along with a lot of other forms of legalized gambling marketed toward lower-income communities, is essentially designed to exploit this exact psychological gap. Lottery advertising doesn't target wealthy neighborhoods. You don't see billboards for scratch-off tickets in gated communities. The marketing is concentrated in areas where the promise of instant transformation is most emotionally appealing, precisely because those are the areas where conventional paths to wealth feel the least accessible. State lotteries generate billions of dollars in revenue annually, and a disproportionate share of that revenue comes from lower-income households. It's essentially a regressive tax that people choose to pay because it sells them something more valuable than money. It sells them hope, wrapped in a $2 piece of paper. Now, I want to be careful here, because I'm not saying buying an occasional lottery ticket makes someone financially doomed. And I'm definitely not saying poor people are somehow worse at making decisions than wealthy people. What I'm saying is that when you understand the actual mechanics behind why this behavior happens, judgment stops making sense as a response. The behavior isn't the problem. It's a symptom of a much deeper problem.
which is that millions of people are operating within a financial system where the conventional rules of wealth building simply don't apply to their situation in any realistic way. So what actually breaks this cycle? It's not lecturing people about odds they already understand better than anyone, because trust me.
People playing the lottery know the odds are terrible. It's providing access to financial strategies that actually feel achievable within a believable time frame. This is part of why financial milestones, like the ones that create genuine momentum, even small ones, matter so much. When someone experiences firsthand that saving even a small amount consistently actually produces a real result, that belief starts to shift. It's not about telling people to trust the process. It's about giving them a small enough win that the process becomes believable. This is also why community and generational proof matter so much more than most financial advice acknowledges. If you've never personally seen someone from your background build wealth through steady saving and investing, you have every reason to be skeptical that it'll work for you. But once you see it, once you watch someone with a similar starting point actually build real financial security through boring, unglamorous consistency, the entire framework becomes believable in a way that no spreadsheet or motivational quote ever could. Here's the real takeaway from all of this. The gap between people who gamble their way toward financial hope and people who invest their way toward financial security isn't primarily a gap in intelligence, discipline, or even math literacy. It's a gap in what feels believable, what feels possible, and how much mental bandwidth someone has left over after just surviving the day. Wealthy people aren't smarter about risk. They're simply operating in a completely different risk environment, one where patience has already proven itself worthwhile. So the next time you see someone buying lottery tickets they probably can't afford, resist the urge to judge the math. Instead, ask yourself what that purchase is really buying them. It's not a ticket. It's a few days of hope in a system that hasn't given them many other realistic paths to imagine a different future. And honestly, understanding that distinction might be one of the most important financial lessons you'll ever learn, even if you never buy a lottery ticket yourself.